it looks like a nice, friendly gathering anyway for someone like me that doesn't get out very much. So I'm here to make friends. So thanks first of all for Ethan and Simon for allowing me to come up and speak this morning. My presentation is quite short. It's a few slides really about smart working, the nature of smart working. And smart working is a term that we at Abodoo are using prolifically at the moment. It's all over the place. And we define Abodoo as a smart working careers platform. Coupled with the fact that we're about trying to improve the hiring process and reduce the inherent bias in the hiring, traditional hiring model. So Abodoo was started by myself and Vanessa in the room over here, so I know some of you already know Vanessa. So the smart working definition, and we didn't come up with the term smart working, it's been out there before, but it's something that, as I say, we've latched onto. And it's all about the use of technology and connectivity to expand that workplace, to look beyond the centralised office, to look at how can you grow, what does your overall model look like. And through the combination of the technology and the connectivity that we now have, that's accelerated. As you were saying, obviously it's really accelerated over the last few years in terms of what we're able to do, what we're able to achieve. It's now become a very real and tangible model. Certainly from what telecommuting was sort of 20 years ago, that was an old sort of stale approach. So with smart working, we look at it as these combinations here. So you could be fully remote, you could be co-working, you could be a hybrid, so a combination, and full-time or flexible roles. So how we're doing it, we're defining ourselves as recruitment as a service, effectively a cloud platform. And the way we've designed our system, so to step back a little bit, we're about a year out in the market, and we've gone out there with a model where it's all about anonymity in the initial matching. So when you first create a profile on Abodoo, the idea is that you're not seen on Abodoo until you're actually matched to an opportunity and both sides agree to go into process. And once that happens, then it's the big reveal. And in order for that to happen, there's this percentage matching that we've built in, this algorithmic approach. I didn't mean a big reveal in that way, by the way. Maybe some people might do that. That's a different website. I'm not involved with it. So, for us, we came out with the product a year ago, and already we're seeing how quickly we're having to change. The technology, the shift in behaviour, the shift in the workplace, the likes of WeWork, the way things are accelerating. Again, what you were saying earlier. So there's this real momentum to the pace of work life, and with that, there has to be a balance. And one of the big things that we're addressing is, typical things like the commute. How do you reduce that down? So look, I know we're in a friendly room. So just out of interest, in terms of a raise of hands, has anyone had to travel sort of for longer than 30 minutes to get here today? Right. Anyone have to travel longer than an hour? That's actually more than I was thinking. Okay. 2 hours? Committed. 3 hours?
Just for this. Wow.
Oh, that's insane. Yeah. That's good. But for people that have to do that on a daily basis, aside from obviously coming and meeting at events, to do that every day to your workplace, that's a huge ask, and there's so much time that could be saved. So, as I said earlier with our platform, one of the things we're trying to address is the bias. I know that's a huge topic in technology. One of the ways, as I've said, that we're looking at reducing the bias, certainly in our approach, is the anonymous part. With that comes the diversity, very much looking at how can we really balance out the workplace. And reports that we've been looking at previously have shown that, in gender diverse organisations, there is that 15% where they're likely to outperform others that are less inclined. The 82% of remote workers reporting low stress. Well, I mean, we've seen some of these kind of stats that are out there about, if I'm working at home, I'm far happier, but there's information out there to support that and support the fact that there is higher performance. Then there was also a report by Stanford where they took a very large corporation, I believe it was a travel agency, and they looked at what they would do if they actually split it out and see what the overall behaviour was in terms of the employees that were fully remote, the ones that were fully in the office. And there's a big report on that, but just one of the interesting things that flagged up was there was a 50% reduction there in the attrition of those who were actually working in the remote capacity, because what we're all crying out for is that degree of flexibility. So the challenges: hiring the right people, and then also providing the tools and structure around what you do when you have the right people in these kind of models. So, you know, for us, well, first of all, you want to look at assessing the needs. So, what is it you're trying to achieve with smart working? You know, is it? I know it's kind of a buzz thing at the moment as well, but in terms of overall growing out your company, you know, which departments are going to favour that aspect of it, which will work particularly well. It's not going to be that everyone's suited to this model, or every company can work this model, but we've seen out there that a great proportion can. So looking at the needs and looking at the specific talent that you need, and how can that talent work remotely. One of the things we've been doing is looking at skills clusters and talent heat maps. So we've been able to start measuring through the data that we've been collecting, certainly in Ireland, in terms of where is the talent, you know, where are these people, where can we kind of expand from the cities and be able to tap into these talent pools. And then we look at, well, then how do you measure the impact of the smart working? And you know, one of the big themes for us has certainly been it's really about the results. It's not so much about measuring what's going in; it's about what's coming back. So the people that you'd be looking for, again, there's some great studies out there on this. Some of these attributes here may be kind of obvious ones. But it's certainly not this thing about kind of extroverts need to be out there and introverts need to just stay at home, you know. I'm kind of a hybrid, actually. So there's the extrovert side of me that's fine standing here right now, and there's the introvert side of me that's like, yeah, I just want to go back and I just want to kind of like keep tapping. But you know, so there is a crossover there, and again, with what we're trying to do with our matching technologies, it's trying to find that behaviour as well, and trying to have that as part of the process. If you are interested in any of that, by the way, please do feel free to come speak to myself or Vanessa. So once you have that team and you're looking at smart work, you know, how do you do that? What are some of the mechanisms out there? And again, technology, it's rapid, you guys will know that, the speed at which we're moving. Some of these products that we use in Abodoo, you know, they weren't even there a few years ago that were available to us. So, and they're ingrained now. I mean, you know, Slack is just kind of like a de facto go-to, you know, for communication. We're all using it, and literally a few years ago we were still like cranking out more emails than we knew what to do with. So, in terms of how we run things, you've got your Slack for your communication channels, that's your free communication. You still have your emails for your high priority stuff. You've got Vodafone, who it's fantastic that we're partnered with Vodafone. So, you know, they're rolling out their unified comms through OneNet. And then there's the other elements of it. So project management tools like Asana, we use Jira. And we've now coupled them together through the likes of Zapier that create these on-the-fly APIs. Like, this is fantastic stuff, and it's so easy and it's so malleable. You can get your teeth into it without having to do any like real hard code a lot of the time. And then sitting our platform and so many other platforms on AWS, you know, it's right there. It's instant. You can crank up servers and send this stuff out there. And then you can measure it through the likes of Hotjar, for instance. It's really powerful stuff, and when you couple everything together, you've got everything you need. You know, you no longer necessarily need that solid infrastructure somewhere. So I talked a little bit earlier about the metrics as well, in terms of, well, what are you looking for in terms of the people that you're acquiring, and about looking at the results as the measurement. But also, you need to consider, when you bring these people in, how are you going to manage them? I know there's a whole thing about trust, for instance, and understanding. So there's another culture piece there about how you can support people that are working, especially if they're 100% remote. Some tips around that. We've started using WOWs. Feel free to use this one, by the way. WOWs is, it's a win, it's an obstacle, and it's a wonder. So now with our calls, when we're jumping on these calls, typically before we'd be like, okay, and everyone just starts talking, and then we're all just going, and blah, 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 and before you know it, an hour's gone. Now with a WOW, we're kind of saying, okay, well, let's put a little bit more structure to this. Let's have, whenever you start speaking, first time on a call, tell us something great, tell us something amazing that's happened, and tell us something that you've achieved. Then tell us the next thing that you're going to work on that's a challenge for you. And then kind of pose a question, like, does anyone have any ideas about how you might be able to solve that? So there's an inclusivity piece to that. The likes of Zapier use things like gigs and jams, so you have different styles and meetings, but you find very quickly that when you're adopting this stuff, it can go belly up if you don't really try and hone in on the culture piece and exactly what resonates with the people that work with you. Have weekly hangouts, have one-to-ones, arrange physical meetups. We all still need that human interaction, even the introverts. Look at time shift freedom. There's the option there that you're now with globalization. Now we're looking beyond the framework of just working in one city. Who's working for you across the other side of the world? What are they going to achieve while you're sleeping? You wake up and you then are able to look at those results. That's a really powerful piece there as well. Some of the companies that are 100% remote, and that speaks for itself. Zapier, fantastic, what they're doing, and I didn't even know until recently that WordPress were actually 100% remote. So the summary from this is, first of all, you need to look at what approach are you trying to incorporate with smart working. What are you looking to achieve out of that? The typical savings that we've seen through studies is a 13K average saving per employee per year. When you look at what you're saving in the overheads in the office space. When you're looking to hire, look for opportunities around how can you reduce the bias, how can you increase the diversity of your teams, and find the metric that works for you. For one company, it's a different metrics, it's different to another. So, what's the sweet spot for you guys? And be a trailblazer. Like 9% of Irish companies are sort of adopting this right now, but so many more could. And we very much want to be working with these companies. I can see from this room today and the talks that we're all hoping that we're forward thinking and we're moving in a good progressive way. And I think if we come together and we scratch our heads together and drink beers together, we figure a lot of this stuff out. And I certainly like to do that. And then as a final little piece there, smart working could be a differentiator. With global companies, 16% of global companies are fully remote and 40% are operating a hybrid model. So there's plenty of scope, and it's only going to grow. And just as a final piece there, we're currently working on this ROI calculator that should be live on our site over the next few days, a few more tweaks to it. But that's a great little instant tool to just start plugging in some information, have a look at those results, see if this is something that appeals to you, and if it does, strike up a conversation with us. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks. Does anyone have any questions, or can I skulk away? Right.
Jim Young, Johnson Controls. Just a quick one for you, Ben. A couple of years back, there was an effort from IBM, Yahoo, Bank of America, and two others, to reverse their policies on telecommuting, work from home, on the basis that their innovation levels had dropped significantly, particularly in the case of Yahoo and IBM. Do you see those trends continuing? What's your take on that? Do you think they're just not using the right tools? What do you reckon?
I think at the time they hadn't nailed it in terms of the communication piece, because, and we're still learning about that now, certainly with our company, the communication piece is the key, and having the opportunity to come together to talk about ideas and scratch heads, you can do that through these tools, but you have to kind of consider the when and how you do that. So create a structure around that. So, with Yahoo, and especially I know Vanessa, you've got plenty of information about that piece from listening to the podcast a little while ago. But there's, I don't see, I can only see this going the other way, and actually that people are going to embrace it more, because I don't know how many companies were fully 100% remote then, but when I look at the likes of Zapier, who I really admire, to see that they're 100% remote, and to see the kind of technology that they're producing and how they produce it, and how their teams work together, they've got it right. It's doable, it's achievable, but I think you've got to kind of do your research, and you've got to sort of look, even trial certain teams, smaller teams, and see how that works best. A/B test it, see what that communication is like. But I don't think it's a barrier to innovation by any means. And I'd like to think that if anything, I'm more on the creative side than the technical side. And I certainly wouldn't want anything to inhibit the ability to be creative with anyone that I was working with, just because I'm not physically there in front of them. Is that kind of answer? That's the best answer I can give.
No, that's good. I mean, I think I have when it's a startup and you've started with that culture and you've grown with that culture, and maybe you grow to 1,000, that's fine. But when you're an old school IBM, a Big Blue, and you've got the old school culture, and you shift people from that culture to working from home, the innovation, the water cooler chats, the coffee break chats, that can break down because you're just not used to working with the kind of tools, the kind of communications, tools that you've been talking about here. So.
Yeah, and I think another piece of that is a lot about the behaviour and personality of the individual. So one of the things that we're looking at the moment, so we're live with the current version of what we have, and we're currently building out a new version, and we've got the next version in the pipeline. But one of the big things we're looking at is what's the behaviour and personalities of those types of people, so you can really kind of hone in and go, well, look, you can't force somebody to just go and work remote to save costs, right? You've got to figure out, are they going to be the types that can still collaborate in that scenario? And if you don't, if you just take a punt on it, then it could backfire. But if you actually just look at it and take the time to consider it and trial it, then there's probably better results out of that. Even for large organisations, I would say. But look, it's still kind of early days for that. But having 100% companies, 100% remote, it's a pretty good sign.
Hi, I have a question. Actually, not only one. But first of all, I love that presentation. I think your product is great.
Thanks.
And that makes me having more questions. So in the recruitment process, you were talking about bias, about the commute and so on. But sometimes when you have a candidate, he may consider to relocate for that job and may not need to commute anymore. Do you have that type of criteria and functionality integrated in your algorithm to consider candidates to relocate for that specific job?
Yeah, so the simplest way we've got the system designed at the moment is when you're posting a job opportunity, for instance, you'll be able to define whether it's mandatory in the location that you're looking for that particular job.
Okay.
So the candidates that match obviously have to fit the criteria if they're specifically located there. Then you've got the option to kind of hone that in. Is it going to be like a city where you need them to be based? Is it a city, region, and then town? So you can hone in that way.
Okay.
And then so the candidates are kind of putting in their information of where they want to be based. What we're thinking about doing in the future is obviously being able to grow that out from the candidate side in terms of, what are the other potential options around if you did have to relocate? What would a package like that look like?
Okay. How quick is the onboarding process or the hiring process? How do you shorten that compared to the average in the market? How quick is the hiring process?
The hiring process itself?
Yeah.
Well,
how do you shorten that compared to if you don't use Abodoo and I go to recruitment process,
yeah.
It may take 2 to 3 months to find the right candidate, maybe more. How quicker is it with Abodoo?
So to put in context of how we've set the platform up, right, is you can register on Abodoo in less than 10 minutes.
Okay.
So if you're an employee, you can register very quickly, you can start posting jobs very quickly. The system's designed for instant matching. So if the candidates match the opportunity, you're going to start to see results pretty quickly.
Okay.
We're the first stage in the process. So with Abodoo, our idea is, look, we're that front line. And then from there, once you've got candidates into process, then you can onboard them into your own ATS solutions and continuing out however you do your hiring mechanisms. So we're that kind of like first point. For the candidates, it's a longer process because they have to fill in all the profile fields in order that we get the right matching on the algorithm. So it's ideally in the future, you know, we'll simplify that even more. But right now, it's really key for us that we get the data that we need. So
finally, what's your coverage? Is it only Ireland, or do you cover other markets?
Everywhere. Globalization. We started off in Ireland, so our database is mainly the Irish market. We've recently soft launched into the UK, and yeah, we're looking at expanding beyond that. Obviously, that's something we're keen to do. But you know, we've got a long way to go. We're a small team, but we're so excited, and we're so. Look, you talk to any of us, we're very passionate about trying to get this out there as quickly as possible, especially into the US.
Yeah, it's a big topic over there.
Yeah. Thanks for the questions, though.
Oh, that's it.
Please say.
With GDPR coming along and all these problems with security and information being confidential and everything, are employers raising any concerns to you regarding remote working and setting the correct infrastructure for that? Like, are you seeing kind of like employers not wanting to move remote because you have to set up an infrastructure that is completely secure? Because maybe the data that you're moving around and the programs that you're moving around are confidential.
Yeah.
And if so, how do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, firstly, there's an education piece to this because it's still relatively new in some aspects. I mean, for us, it's about what framework that company has in place, certainly from the legal side as well. That's something that we don't facilitate. You know, we're part of the initial matching process, and we're certainly here to help in terms of anything we know around smart working. There's also, you know, that consultancy piece that I guess you're referring to in terms of if a company says, well, look, I'm keen to do this, you know, how do I manage my legal framework around this? So we know people that are in that consultancy side, certainly, and we're more than willing to kind of help on a path towards that and certainly help with the introductions. But you know, I think what's happened recently is we're certainly kind of really hammering out this message that smart working is very real, very tangible, but it's also, you know, we have to kind of re-amplify that we're a careers platform as well. So, you know, there's so much advice we give, especially, well, where we can anyway. Any other questions? Everyone hungry? Well, how do you
charge employers to post jobs? Is that part of your revenue model?
We've recently changed the way we work, so it's on a per user license at the moment. That's been our go-to model, but we actually have a new solution in place that Vanessa has all the information on about that. So just so you're in for that one. You can tell I'm more on tech side than sales, right? Right, speak to Vanessa.
I will be running out the door I'm speaking at an event this afternoon, so Vanessa@Abodoo.com in case you sorry. Don't want to be rude.
Nice of you.
Ben, one last question from me. Abodoo is 100% remote, right?
Yeah.
I'm
I'm not falling for that one. Oh, thanks very much for listening. Anyway.